I am going to present the topic public debt. Public debt is one of the subtopic in the public finance. First, we can understand the concept of public finance. Public finance is the study of role of the government in the economy. It is the branch of economics that assess the government revenue and expenditure of the public authorities like central government, state government, and local government. In public finance meaning, we have learned about the public authorities. The public authorities are the central government, state government, and local government. These are the three governments. They are having their own revenue and expenditure. When the revenue is not sufficient to meet the expenditure, they are borrowing debt from the other sources. So this presentation we are going to learn about the public debt. What is public debt? Public debt refers to the loans raised by the government within the country and also from the other outside of the country. Then, why the governments are borrowing money? When the government revenue is not enough to meet their sufficient expenditure, automatically the government is borrowing money. Now we are going to see the objectives of the public debt. Why the government is borrowing money? What are the reason for the borrowing the debt? So, first thing, to cover the budgetary deficit, unpopularity of taxation, to maintain economic stability, to maintain economic development, to meet unexpected continuous expenditure, create essential non-income yielding assets, to finance public sector enterprises for welfare programs, to create social overheads for better resource allocation, create essential and non-income yielding assets. These are the purposes the government. Now we are going to learn about the classification of public debt. Different types of public debts also be there. So here we are having the different types. First one, internal and external, then productive and unproductive, voluntarily and compulsorily, redeemable and irredeemable, short, medium and long term debt, funded and unfunded debt, marketable and non-marketable debt, cross and net debt. These are the classifications of public debt. Now we are going to learn about the internal and external debt. Internal debts are raised from the individuals, NBFS, commercial banks and central banks within the area controlled by the public authority. So from this one, the government can transfer the funds from the people to the government within the country. This is called as internal debt. External debt, the government borrow the money from the outside of the area controlled by the public authority. That is the payment they can get it from the outside of the country. Next one, productive and unproductive debt. What is mean by productive debt? When the government is borrowing the loans for the used for the projects which yield income to the government. For example, construction of steel plants, power projects. These debts are fully covered by assets. The next one, unproductive debts. These are loans to the projects which are not yielding income of the government. For example, financing war, flood relief, like that the government borrowing the money for these purposes. These are called as unproductive debt. Next one, voluntarily and compulsory debt. What is meant by voluntary debt? Voluntary debt, in case of voluntary, people contribute to the government loan program without any compulsion. Automatically the people are ready to give the money for the government, that is the voluntary debt. Compulsory debt includes government use force or pressure for making people subscribe to the government loans. Next one, we are going to see about the redeemable or and irredeemable debt. What is mean by redeemable debt? Whenever any government is borrowing money, they have to repay it. But that is on also particular period of time. So redeemable debt are the debt those who which the government is committed to repay at an appointed date. Loans for which no commitment is made are called as the irredeemable debt. Next one, short term, medium term, and long term loans. That is, short term loans usually incurred by the government for the period of 3 months to 1 year, generally for covering temporary deficit in budget. Whenever the government is facing any deficit in the budget, the government is borrowing loan for the period of 3 months to 1 year, that is called as the short term loan. Next one, medium term loans, which are obtained for more than a year and less than 10 years. For example, for the war finance, meet expenditure on education, etc. Long term loans that repayable after long period, generally for the period of 10 years and above, generally for development finance. So these are all coming under the short term, medium term and long term loans. Funded and unfunded debts. Funded debts is the long-term debt usually for creation of permanent assets. Provision is made for repayment of loan. Unfunded debt is a short-term debt for meeting the current needs and paid off within a year. Next one, marketable and non-marketable debt. What is meant by marketable debt? The marketable loan, the securities are traded or negotiable in the open market. But in the non-marketable debt, the trading in the stock market, the funds are the both the bonds are trading in the stock market. It is non-negotiable and non-marketable loans. Last one, cross and net debt. Cross debt refers to the total amount of debt outstanding at any time. The government, whatever the debt they are having overall for the country, that is called as the cross debt. Net debt refers to the cross debt minus the funds earmarked for repayment. Sometimes the government is having some amount to keeping for the repayment. So from the cross debt, they can deduct the funds and marking us, that is called as the net debt. In this presentation, we have learned about what are the different types of public debt. So I hope you have understood the classification of public debt. Public debt is one of the subtopic in the public finance. Thank you all.